Welcome everybody to Today in Space. This week on our episode of People of Science, we have Jenna Bryant on the podcast. Jenna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a long time coming. We've been going back and forth trying to schedule this. So it's cool to finally have you here so we can talk embedded ventures and all that stuff. But let's start just real quick. Tell us about who you are, what you're doing now, and like embedded ventures. Give us like the cap, and we can start from there.
Yeah, well, we're an early stage dual use tech fund. I am the co-founder and co-GP alongside Jordan Noone, who you have spoken with before. And we definitely, I feel like, represent the next generation of fund managers. We're doing things a bit differently. First, just with the dual use tech thesis to begin with, but also with the way we get to know potential founders, the way we diligence companies, and then some of the community impact initiatives that we work on in STEM outreach, et cetera, are some things that we do just as a time investment that I'm extremely proud of.
The more I've learned about embedded ventures, the more that I've really enjoyed seeing what this next generation is looking like. Real quick, is my video weird or is it just on my end?
Oh, it is weird.
It is weird. Okay.
It's it froze for it's like
frozen in
you're in a matrix.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh, that's kind of cool actually. What just happened there?
It is kind of cool. I've multiplied myself. I've cloned myself.
How'd you do that?
That's dangerous. That's very dangerous.
That's deep tech.
Here, I'm gonna stop my video. Maybe it's just the GoPro acting up.
Yeah, let's try again. I'll tell you.
Okay.
Or it could be all of the neon lights behind me. Your camera was like, "Whoa, we can't handle that."
You're winning on that front.
Or it was my Spice Girls tea. One or the other.
Could be.
Now I can't see you at all.
All right, let's do this. While I'm figuring my audio out, tell the folks. I can put something over this. Tell the folks about yourself. Tell us about the person, Jenna Bryant.
Oh my gosh. How much time do we have?
About an hour.
I have a really super non-traditional background. My career launched in tech, actually recruiting for early stage startups many years ago when Snap was new, when Oculus was on Kickstarter, and it actually was a job that was just meant to pay my bills. I have always been creative. I was a dancer growing up. And so I really didn't know exactly what I was going to be when I grew up. When I was a kid, if you asked me, I said I wanted to be a teenager. When I was a teenager, I probably said, tour with Beyonce or something like that. So it took me a hot minute to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And it actually wasn't until I transitioned from recruiting to venture that I said, okay, I think I want to do this for the rest of my life. I definitely also wanted to do things differently, which is why I'm super proud of the fund that Jordan and I have built with embedded and some of the ways we're doing things differently. But yeah, super non-traditional path to venture, that's for sure. But I'm glad that the world's changing. There's this long-standing misconception that we're all either left-brained, leaning towards logic and analysis and detail-oriented tasks, or right-brained. So taking an approach to tasks more creatively or intuitively. But I think that really limits our potential. And both art and science really require a foundation that calls for creativity and curiosity and experimentation. And so I feel like my dual pursuit in, especially in the early years of my career, of remaining super creative and working in tech actually allowed me to embrace a life and develop a career that had no restraints. I loved when I was re-listening back to your podcast with Jordan. You mentioned non-traditional paths to tech, etc. And I just really enjoyed. It was really fun to listen, especially to listen to two awesome people celebrate women in tech and diversity in tech and in venture. So I really enjoyed listening back to that. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, this podcast literally exists because of the non-traditional path. So part of what I'm trying to do with these segments is talk to people like yourself who just there's so many people that are on the edge of wanting to be in science or tech or any of the STEM and STEAM. Like you're a
Yep.
great example of that. Um, and I think showing them and having these conversations just helps people know, be like, hey, like, okay, I can take whatever path I need to take to get
Yeah.
there.
It's crazy. I've learned, so much with some of the STEM outreach projects we've
Mm.
done.
Tell
I
us
don't
about
know.
those. Yeah,
Okay, so we're really, really holding our own in the science and technology section of Twitch. I don't know if you've seen our
that's
Twitch
awesome.
stream, but we do this. I mean, when I say this, I mean I'm laughing at myself because I'm pretty sure most people are on Twitch watching people play Among Us and not watching our stream. But we actually partnered with really early on when we were first developing our thesis and ramping up to investing. Jordan and I both have been super passionate about STEM, about representation, about being
Mm.
visible, and also showing what it's like to learn something new. I
Yeah.
know for me, I probably would have been really, really intimidated, um, especially really young, like in high school, middle school, to lean into STEM. I never, no one ever would have put me in kind of that pathway, and it's because I didn't see anyone like me.
Mm.
And so we talk a lot about how learning is messy and how it doesn't all work out perfectly like you see on YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And so we thought it would be really fun with it. We partnered with the mentorship project and they teamed us up with Robeson County, North Carolina's public city schools.
Mm.
And they are just incredible. The entire school system, they have like amazing leaders over there who allowed their students to watch us stream every Thursday as we build an 8-bit
Oh,
computer from scratch on breadboard. So we sent them the breadboard kits. We actually did Ben Eater's kit, which is kind of funny because he does the perfect YouTube video and then I do the really messy version on Twitch. But it's shown what it's like to learn something for the first time and that it's
yeah.
super messy and that it doesn't all go perfectly. We
Mhm.
spend, it's on the stream. It's me like literally showing a close up of, my hands actually doing, we call it
Yeah.
jumpering,
Mm.
breadboarding. And Jordan talking me through it. Of course, my co-founder and co-GP here at Embedded, and then Jessie Frizzell, who's, I mean, she's famous. Engineers who hear this are going to probably know who she is. But they're talking me through this, and we'll spend weeks debugging the project.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, who would think that some of the top engineers in the world are needing to debug a you know electrical engineering fundamental breadboarding
Yeah.
project. And so it's something that we're really passionate about. We love, again, like I said earlier, we like to invest our time in things like this.
Mm.
But something that we actually, I'm not even sure if I'm really supposed to say it. I think I can because they put it on their website, but we haven't officially announced it yet. But we are actually bringing back Jordan, me and Jordan personally, and then also on behalf of Embedded, we are bringing back a project at USC called Project Payload. It's with their K through 12 STEM Center. It's going to return this summer, and it's for middle school girls, so they can experience science, technology, engineering, math, all the STEM things through rocket design, payloads, satellites, Arduino
Awesome.
programming. So they're going to design, build, and launch their rockets. And high altitude balloon sensor device at Starbase
Nice.
in Los Alamitos. And so we're super, super excited about it. Again, haven't officially announced it, but it is on their website. So I feel like I can spill the tea here.
Well, that's friggin' amazing. Like that is such an awesome opportunity to be able to actually like work on every system, understand why it's working, get it to do what it's supposed to do, and like have a reason for working on something.
Yeah.
Is
And it's
huge.
such a, and the stakes are high,
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so cool that,
Yeah.
the opportunities are huge, but also to see what it's like for things not to work.
Yes.
And especially I'm the non-engineer on our
Mm.
team, but I hear all of these stories when Jordan was learning so many things for the first time, and we laugh at it, but I'm like, I wish everyone could hear these stories because
Yeah.
it really demystifies what a day in the life is for an engineer, because it's a lot
Yeah.
of trying something, it doesn't work out, try again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, we're all about that here. Like, part of this whole Today in Space podcast is me figuring out the world around me and like learning from things. Like, for a while, James Webb Space Telescope an impossibility. It wasn't gonna happen. It was gonna take forever. And now that it's happened, I'm totally on board. I'm totally blown away by it, and like that's okay. Like that's part of the scientific thing is like you can be wrong, and you can grow off of that. So the
Isn't
fact
it
that you
all
guys are doing
wild?
that, it is. It
It's super
is.
cool. I feel like sometimes someone we were talking about launch earlier today,
Mm.
and I was like, I've been living in sci-fi world over here. I was like, launch is so yesterday. I sounded so ding dongy when I said it, but I was like, who do I think I am? I thought it was pretty funny though, but it's true. We're so beyond launch. There's so much happening, and it does
Hmm.
seem sci-fi. Actually, it's pretty cool.
It does. It
I
does.
like your shirt, by the way.
Thank you. This is a Juleah Kaliski design. She's been on the podcast a few times.
That's super cool.
Yeah, she's an artist, graphic artist. She does amazing stuff.
I love
Um,
it. I'm
thank
gonna
you.
have to look her up. I'm wearing Hot Topics finest Spice Girls.
Very nice.
You
Very
know,
nice. It's a throwback.
that's right.
So let's go back to so dance was kind of an early part of your life and what you wanted to do. Like how did it
Yeah,
go from dance to tech?
great question. I think it was, after school, I needed a job that paid my bills. And
Truth.
I ran into a family friend who had a boutique recruiting firm. I was commission only,
Mm,
and I was considered actually somewhat technical, which now I laugh at that. But my degree is in fashion design, and I
mm,
focused on computer aided design. And so I learned
mm.
AutoCAD, Illustrator, Photoshop, all the things. And so I laugh at that being considered technical, but whatever. I remember spending a lot of my time at the Barnes and Noble at the Grove reading like probably computer programming for dummies, but yeah, all through recruiting, it was something. It was a happenstance. I was like, I could probably be a recruiter. I love talking to people,
Yeah.
and um, and I really am into what's happening with startups. This was at the
Mm.
time when a lot of really great engineers, especially in LA, worked at agencies. And so it was
Ah.
before, big brands did their own websites. The agencies built them for them. And
Mm.
so it was a lot of recruiting out of agencies, literally trying to convince people to go to startups that now are huge. And they're like, absolutely not. I would never. What is this?
Yeah.
Is this a scam? Not really, but it was a different time where
Totally.
it was really hard. And it was, yeah, so it was, I didn't realize. Now in hindsight I'm like, wow, how cool that there was so much happening. And
Yeah.
in LA I feel like I got a really unique perspective
Mm.
because it was a smaller pond than San Francisco. So I feel like I
Mm.
really got to be a part of everything that was being built here from the ground up. And so slowly over time, I had my very first mentor is a guy named Colin DeJaro, who's one of the MySpace co-founders,
Mm.
which I was telling my interns last year. I was like, y'all, MySpace was it. Okay.
Yeah.
You have no idea. You haven't lived until you've had a MySpace. So,
You could do so
but
much
Colin,
with it at the time.
yes. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember we were all like coding our own sites on MySpace and stuff and doing really cool stuff. It was like
Yeah.
entry level programming. Um, and so he was actually a really awesome mentor for me. And he was someone
Mm.
who really encouraged me to go off on my own, to work for myself, work just with companies I wanted to work with. And that's when I really started loving it.
Mm.
And I think all along, I don't think anyone, when they're growing up says, "Ooh, I want to be a recruiter when I grow up."
Right.
And that same. I never, I like never thought I would say that. And
Mm.
so when it did happen, I was going, okay, I really like this. But what else? And so it
Yeah.
wasn't until I transitioned to venture that I was like, okay, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. But
Mm.
I've always loved to dance. I will always dance. It's a huge part of my life. And
Mm.
again, I do think that like it really complements everything that I do here at Embedded. It also exposes me to so many different people, and
Yeah.
I love music. It's just a really nice balance.
Yeah.
It gives me what I need in my life to be happy.
Totally. And the other thing too is like, and that we talked about this with Jordan, is like that balance of you two working together, right? It's like the
Mm.
super technical and
Oh
then
yeah.
like the sales, the investment side of things, the bigger picture, like the more create. Not that Jordan isn't creative, but in your mind thinking creatively as far as the business and where that can go,
Yeah,
and
we
then Jordan can
definitely.
be creative on like how to
Oh
engineer
yeah,
that, how to technically, and all that stuff.
it's so fun. We like seeing how we complement each other,
Yeah.
and we end up doing so many of our calls together. And in the early days, we did that when we were really sharpening our pitch, and
Mm,
even just getting feedback from mentors in the industry. We would do those together because we wanted to
yeah.
hear the opinion together. And it was really neat and something that we just continued doing because it was so natural. We can if there's a question I can't answer or
Mm,
he's more suited to answer, we go that direction, same vice versa, and it's a really good balance. And so, and I also with our thesis at embedded, I actually started embedded and Jordan was an advisor, and then
mm.
he makes it sound easy. It wasn't easy for me to recruit him,
It,
but
it did. I listened back. He did make it sound easy.
he makes it sound so easy. I'm like, oh, if only they knew the truth. Here it is. Okay. So I mean, I had been kind of planting the seed for him to transition into venture for a long time. And a lot of that was because I wanted to see more people like him in venture.
Yeah.
With all the software startups that have been hugely successful and very visible to everyone in the world. A lot of software founders who have been successful have transitioned into venture.
Mm,
You haven't seen so many hard tech uh, founders who have been successful like Jordan
mm,
transitioning into venture. And so the even evaluating deals, it's you're you're trying to evaluate whether founders who can execute on a hypothetical that's going to
mm.
take maybe even 3 years to engineer.
Right.
The kind of traditional banking background doesn't really fit there in this little pocket, because you are evaluating character qualities of the
Right.
founders. You're evaluating, do they have the technical depth to execute on this hypothetical? What's their how are they going to spend the money? Are they being realistic with spend with these
Right.
long exit timelines? And I was really excited to see not even just I'd say you see more PhDs in hard tech
Mm,
venture, which is amazing. But I was excited to see more, in engineering leadership and people like Jordan
yeah.
transitioning into venture. So when I recruited him over, I knew that was the gap I needed to fill. It was something that I
Mm,
was super passionate about. I knew what my skills were going to be and how I did things differently, especially on character evaluation. Are they the people who can grow and build and scale a team? Can they retain
mm.
talent? One of the first things
Right.
we do once we make an investment is help them recruit their team. Your first job as a founder, once you get the first check, is you become a recruiter. You normally don't have an in-house team, and you also normally can't afford to have someone on retainer just yet.
Right.
And so we help a lot with that. But regardless, even if they work with an agency or whatever, they have to be an excellent recruiter.
Right.
And so I certainly knew where my value add was
Mm,
on the diligence side, and because of the recruiting, the deal flow just naturally pops up.
mm.
But I didn't. But I knew that I needed this other piece, which was Jordan's skill set to really
Yeah.
complement mine to see the fun that I wanted to see exist happen. So it
Cool.
it, it wasn't easy to get him, but I did.
Well, bravo. It's
Long story
definitely
long.
that. No, that was great. That was great. I it's interesting to hear about how this stuff works at the higher level. I've worked at some tech companies now in my time, and like three or four at this point. So I've seen founders come and go. I've seen people kind of transition from being a part of the original company to now the company's doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool that you guys are like helping them all start at a certain point. And I'm sure at some point, if when things work out, you can then bring people across the different companies and investments that you're using.
It's super interesting because something that we did kind of as an experiment that
Mm,
is working is we incubated a company, Kittycad.
mm.
And the name
Yes.
actually started as a joke, and then everyone was like, "You can't change it." So we stuck with it. But we had we knew that we were in a unique spot to be able to do it, and it actually all started because Jessie Frizzell, who I was talking about earlier with the stream, she
Mm,
called Jordan and was like, "Hey, what did y'all do at Relativity when you had this type of problem?
Mm.
How do hard tech shops solve this? Basically, what's next for CAD software for hardware?
Mm.
And Jordan was like, no, good luck. There's not a solution for it. And we were like, well, let's just see what's out there. And
Yeah.
so we, reached out to engineers and said, what have y'all seen? And everyone was like, are you going to create this? If so, I want to work there. Or, if you had this, something readily available for us, we'd buy it, or
The hype was
whatever.
real.
The
Yeah.
hype was so real. Like, I think we did like a random email address saying like, send us your thoughts. And we got full on
Wow.
thesis papers in our inbox. I was like, wow, people are very passionate about CAD.
Yeah.
And so we decided to incubate it. And it's been really cool baking it from scratch, and even seeing the value that we've brought just from understanding the problem really
Right.
well. And then just kind of bootstrapping the team together, and it seeing something go from nothing to something is really exciting. And the
Yeah.
fact that we get to be that involved, I'm like, this is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we're really excited to do again when we see gaps in the industry that aren't being filled. And honestly, a lot of people don't even understand the problem because they've never
Yes.
walked a day in Jordan or Jess's shoes. So
Right. And
it's
there's so many
exciting.
different people too in that regard. Just to go off on a nerd tangent here, as many of the
Let's do
people
it.
that emailed you back in, like when I was in school. So this is 2008 for into 2012, 2015. Like SolidWorks was the thing, and everyone had to learn that. Super expensive and not that accessible. If you're outside of that, not throwing any shade at SolidWorks, it's great. It's a great CAD program.
I'm going to tell them you
Um,
said this. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
but they like everything then kind of got built off of that, so there's like a very similar platform. But at a certain point, is it everyone trying to repeat the same thing that's been done, or is it actually making the thing better than the last thing was? So it sounds like that's what you guys are trying to tackle, and that's
It's
huge.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we are, it's not going to happen overnight. And
Right.
so we're in it for the long haul. But luckily, we're
I
hard
like
tech
it.
investors, so we're used to long
That's
timelines. So
good.
it
That's
works out.
awesome. That's awesome. So tell me more about the thesis and like investing from your perspective. We got Jordan's perspective, and he comes at it from like the technical side of things of like what is it possible for us to make and how great can we make that thing. But for you, for investing, like what's your, do you have a thought process? What's that, where do you see the next 5-10 years, and then we'll just jump to 20. I'd like to think what you,
Oh, goodness.
what are
Well,
your thoughts on it?
technically, I'm not supposed to give investment advice. So
Okay.
I'll be as
Okay.
broad as I can here. Um, but actually, an area that's fun to talk about, and mostly because a lot of people, it's new to them, and it was new
Mm.
to me. But the origin of me and Jordan meeting each other was my curiosity in dual use tech. And in fact,
Mm.
I didn't even know like what the term dual use really referred to.
Yeah.
And so it's when something is available to both the public and private sector. And so I
Mm.
was really eager, I was seeing all of these awesome technologies at the same time, and he still currently is. My brother's a Marine Corps V-22 Osprey pilot.
Mm.
And so he's currently based in Okinawa, Japan.
Mm.
But I'm like proud younger sis. We're
Mm.
we're only 2 years apart age wise, 1 year
Wow.
school wise, and so we were super close growing up. And so I've always like just been like such a huge fan of my brother.
Oh, that's
Also
awesome.
extremely protective. And so I was seeing all of these technologies available as the younger sis. He would
Right.
say he's more protective of me, but whatever, which is probably true. But I was seeing all of these emerging technologies,
Mm.
and then going to my brother and being like, hey, are y'all using this? Are y'all using that? And I was just hearing some of the hurdles that our active service members deal with
Yeah.
because there isn't tech that's available for use, and that's ready, that can be updated quickly, that's what we call clean.
Mm.
And I was going, but why not, why
Yeah.
not? And so I knew, being an early stage investor, you are able to coach and mentor early teams through certain decisions, and it could be one different decision that allows them to have an opportunity to work with the government in the future. It could be one wrong decision that
Sure.
eliminates that opportunity forever. And so I actually cold outreached Jordan on LinkedIn. I threw together this webinar series. I always say that it happened because of my Southern accent. People felt sorry for me, so they showed up. But
Oh no.
I was like, they were like, oh, this girl, we're gonna show up just to help her out. But it ended up, it's like a really, really cool little webinar series. It's Chatham House rules, so what happens there stays there. But it's collaborative discussions around how to work with the government, especially for early stage startup founders. It's brand new territory for them. And I'm a great example of that. I was going, I don't really know how to mentor my founders and make sure that, they make certain decisions that allow them to be suitable to potentially work with the government in the future. And so I cold outreached Jordan, invited him to my webinar series, really wanted to get to know him because I was going, wow, this person is clearly insanely talented. He's also figured out how to work with the government pretty quickly and from day one.
Yeah.
And so that's actually how our conversation began. And that's how we originally met. But I'd say I learn so much every day. And Mandy Vaughn, who's our operating partner, she and Jordan really mentor and coach me on the dual use tech side of things. But in terms of learning, that's been something that has been fascinating. And it's also super personal to me. And so that was the driving force behind my passion for dual use tech and leaning into that. And so that's definitely not a traditional thesis for fund managers. And it's not easy either. But it's, you can have the, obviously we have to, it's our fiduciary responsibility to our LPs to have, certain returns, et cetera. And you can have both. And we've seen it happen. It's going to be happening even more in the future. And so we're really excited to be kind of paving the way there, especially as the next generation of fund managers. Obviously other people did it first who really paved the way, but
paved the way, right. But we all stand on the shoulders of, our predecessors. It's people who did great before us.
That's right.
It's true. But that's such an interesting crossroads because it's not something that gets discussed a lot. And it's especially relevant to space where the government is involved at pretty much every level. This is the first time that we're starting to see some private, enterprises doing it themselves, but they're still having to go and work together with the government. So I think that's a really important bridge that's being connected that you're helping with.
There's a huge learning curve too, though. I always say I'm learning to translate government to English. It's not easy. And for me, I'm so passionate about it naturally because it is personal to me. But oftentimes, founders are given advice of, don't worry about that. Don't go in that direction. You can make money, without doing that. And I'm like, well, but what if you did both? And you made even more money. And sometimes it's just like making one different decision in the early days. Like it's not even and learning how to write proposals, which I'm like, discipline, let's go, and now there are people who can help with that. And everyone is, or not everyone, but more people are leaning into this and wanting to figure out how can we help, young companies figure this out. And so it's an exciting time, but also a learning curve for everyone. Like we're all learning all the time how all of this works, but definitely necessary, especially when we start geeking out about space stuff in the future.
Totally. That's a perfect segue. So let's geek out about some space stuff that's happening right now. Is there anything that's happened recently that has just completely blown you away in anything that's launched or anything like that?
I'll tell you, I'm surprised at how actually archaic some of our infrastructure is. So I actually normally look and I'm like, really? True story. I actually told Jordan that I thought relativity was printing too slow. I'm like, I can't believe I said that. But
you're hilarious.
It could be faster. I don't know. That's the non-engineer.
I love it.
But honestly, I'm fascinated that our information travels overseas through subsea cables. Just even how the internet works is fascinating to me. And I'm like, how in the world, even our office is in Malibu and we don't even have signal there. So I mean, it's just crazy. so I'm excited to see like critical infrastructure catch up. I know that
Mm.
doesn't sound as like sci-fi as like I really
It's realistic.
could go, but
Yeah.
realistically, it is going to take a long time.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's the hurdle that everything's going
yeah,
to hit if we don't figure it out and all this progress just happens all of a sudden.
totally.
Yeah.
And with what's next, I'm like, man, switching to digital was easy, but
Mm.
like every company becoming a robotics company, you know, hard tech is hard
Yeah.
and requires insane resources. It
Mm.
requires latency issues to be fixed. It requires like just insane connectivity and hardware,
Right.
storage, etc. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, I'm excited to see changes there. For years, honestly, I've been like losing sleep about GPS, but
How so? Just the
just Google
what?
it.
Just
Just
Google
just
it. Okay.
Google like 20. I mean, there have been articles, you know, for the last 10 years on, you know, the how behind GPS is and
Mm.
some of the risks with current infrastructure, and it's
Mm.
terrifying actually. And so I'm really excited to see advancement in
Mm.
GPS. But then I just love like I think space tech in general. Jordan and I sometimes think a little differently on it, as I think more on the critical infrastructure side.
Mm.
Um, but also I get super excited about like our company Inversion Space that we've invested, not our company, but a company we invested in.
Mm.
They're doing low cost reentry capsules. Like I mean, that kind of stuff is just
Beautiful.
so neat. You know,
Yeah.
when you think of the possibilities, I'm like, how cool is that?
Yeah. Well, I
What about
mean,
you? What are
what am I
you,
excited?
yeah, what's that? And you can go sci-fi or not.
Oh, well, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Um, I've been really obsessed lately with what the first people in the first 50 years of living in space are going to have to deal with.
Like
And like what
radiation.
skills, but even like let's say we get that right. Let's say we get a spacecraft that works.
Okay.
Like how skillful are you going to have to be to troubleshoot while you're up there? Like if you're out there for a 5-year mission, like you're not
And
going to
is
be
it
able to
Tony Stark
communicate.
style where you have like Jarvis?
Yeah, probably. I think it would have to be. I actually think about you guys sometimes where I'm like, okay, like after launch, post launch, like what do you do? Like what is that going to look like? And there's going to having an artificial intelligence on board that will be able to keep life systems running, troubleshoot faster than you're going to be able to, and then
Yeah.
you're there to tweak and do the other manual stuff. That's the thing that I've really been captured by.
What's interesting though is like as a kid, never would I imagined my granddad was telling a story the other day of about my nephew and said
Mm.
that they were talking about his times tables. And my nephew was, you know, he was doing his timetables, whatever. And then my granddad said, okay, what is 36 times 36? I'm going to use that example. And William goes, hey, Alexa, what's 36 times 36? And I was like, that's crazy. Like when I think
Yeah,
about that, I'm like, as a kid, that would have been insane to me, you know, to
yeah,
be able to do that.
yeah,
So when I think, gosh, yeah, especially once infrastructure catches up. But
yeah.
yeah, where would you go in space if you could like go anywhere?
If I could go anywhere, I don't know. I think the moon is extremely like if you're gonna go first to someplace, I think the moon's great. It's also a nice trip back. It's also kind of I'm just trying to make sure I have a way back. That's pretty easy
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
possible. But
Who would
no,
you
the
go
moon would
with
be great.
if
Who would I
if
go
you had
with?
yeah, if you had to go if you could
Hmm.
only go with one other person, who would you go with?
Oh, I would go with my girlfriend Sarah. Absolutely, she's also
Sweet.
a space nerd, um, and we would geek out about a lot of the science stuff that we would just the experience. We both
I love
were
it.
really excited about it
If you
growing up.
got to walk on the moon, who would get to step out of the capsule first?
Ooh, I think I'd have to give it to her. Yeah, have her go
That's so
first. Yeah,
sweet.
yeah. I would make
I
some
love that.
big obnoxious noise and try and take the moment afterwards. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
You like jump over. No,
Yeah, I would make some big, long speech probably. Yeah.
I
No.
love it. I love it. No, that's so fun. I know. Isn't it wild to think that like, I mean, already space flight is becoming easier and low cost. It's
It
kind of
is.
wild.
It's crazy, and I'm super excited for like the whole reusability thing when I was in school was not at all a reality, and now it's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
All spacecraft are going to be reusable from now on. And to think that that's like the big jump that we've made in 10 years, like to your point of the infrastructure, it's still stuck in that post shuttle era. Like we really, everything is still, it was, all of the funding was at a standstill from what I can tell from back then. Everything just kind of screeched to a halt, and we kept using the tech that we had from before. The Soyuz was the thing
Yep.
taking all the humans up.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think there's going to be like Blue Origin's orbital reef is an interesting idea. You know, a conglomerate of companies trying to put together something that makes a financial case for space stations. I think that's good.
Yep.
I think it's going to be 15 years if they get it up there before it like really kicks off. But there's going to be a lot of things that'll get tested out there, I think.
It's so cool. Every time I think about it, I'm like, ooh. And
Yeah.
gosh, I hope it happens sooner than later, you know, especially on the infrastructure side, because none of these
Totally.
cool things can happen if everything else doesn't catch up.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, and there's been a struggle for resources lately.
Yeah,
Like even
supply
just
chain stuff
launches.
is
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, this is the worst logistical time.
mhm,
All of this stuff to happen. Does
is
something
wild.
like SpaceX's Starlink, the constellations, does that from an infrastructure perspective? What are your thoughts?
It doesn't solve all of our problems. I'll just say that.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah.
And I have several predictions on and ideas on how that could be adjusted. I won't go too far into it because we'll be here all day.
I mean, this is the
But
place.
I don't think
Fair.
that's not our solution for everything that we need
Yeah.
fixed at the moment. But it certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan. I'm
Okay.
definitely a fan.
Do you have any ideas for, I guess, if you had to pick one thing in the infrastructure that you think would be like the most influential? Because I think it's an important topic.
Gosh, and infrastructure just in general, there are too many things.
What's a major, I don't want to say necessarily major weakness, but like what could you do today that could make a big difference?
Well, even just, you know, fixing GPS
Okay.
and making sure that time synchronization and everything is rock solid.
That's
And I know a lot
important.
of people are working on that. So,
Yeah.
but people don't realize. People are like, "Oh, your Google Maps wouldn't work," and I'm like, "Yeah." And bank transactions can't happen. Like so many other things. Like
Yeah.
everything runs on GPS.
Oh,
So
we're
it's
all so used to
wild.
having even just our basic everyday lifestyle would be completely halted if it
Oh,
crashed.
yeah, it's unbelievable, and
People
you
would be
know,
lost.
it keeps me up at night. So maybe don't Google.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
do it. Don't go down that rabbit hole. You'll never sleep again. Tell me about the is that a pop behind you?
Yes, this is Doc from Back to the Future 2015.
Oh, cool. Did you watch
My
the DeLorean documentaries?
the DeLorean documentaries. No.
Okay, you have to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay,
Are you
cool.
a Back to the Future fan?
Oh, absolutely. That's probably sci-fi wise the most influential series for me. Like I see like Doc is such a great character. Marty is the perfect like balance to him. Um
Yes, it's so good.
it's so good, and the time like to and watching the documentaries of how it was made and how just amazing it is that they even finished the movie in the first place.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's so good, and like I love all three of them. I remember I got the trilogy on VHS, which of course dates me, but
No,
for my birthday.
I need to actually get a VHS player because I got some Star Wars VHS tapes that I want to play.
Ooh.
But okay, keep
Oh
going
yeah.
though.
No, no, no. So yeah, Back to the Future is a big sci-fi. Star Trek for sure.
Oh yeah.
Captain Picard, the Borg, like all of that stuff. Q, I love Q as a character.
Yep.
Yep.
You have to watch there are a few documentaries out right now on
Mm.
is it John DeLorean? The creator of the
Oh,
DeLorean.
of the car. Dang. Okay.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I know a
There's
little bit about that and how crazy that was too.
yeah, I watched one recently called Framing John DeLorean. It was wild. I was like, wow.
Oh
I
my
never
god,
knew about half of this stuff. It was insane, but
that's
interesting
crazy.
nonetheless. But I was
Yeah.
like, wow. And I was going, man, I never see DeLoreans anywhere. And then I'm driving down the street in Palm Springs after a friend's wedding, and boom, there's a DeLorean on the side of the road. I was like, isn't that what always happens?
Yeah, totally. I may have applied to a competition to get a DeLorean. I
Stop.
didn't get it. I didn't get it though.
Were you playing Monopoly at McDonald's?
No, no, it was actually recently. It was like an Omaze thing or something like that.
That is so cool.
Yeah, but I didn't get it. That's okay. That's all right.
Well,
I can
next
keep
time.
trying. Next time. Next time.
Next time. I love it.
So let's see. Are there any influential sci-fi for you? Was
Gosh,
sci-fi
really?
a big part for you growing up?
Yes, I loved and still love movies. My favorite movie
Mm.
actually of all time is Wall-E.
Oh,
You
that's
can't
a
see, but
good
I do have a
one.
Wall-E on my shelf way over there.
Oh, cool.
But I just love Wall-E. It's so
Yeah.
great, and I love kind of the juxtaposition of Wall-E and Eva, and it's tragic and exciting, and
Mm.
you experience all the emotions, and you get in a short period of time,
Yeah.
and
No.
you fall in love with a trash compactor, and you're
Totally.
like, oh,
Totally.
my heart is melting for Wall-E. But yeah, it also, especially with how we're thinking about living our lives and the
Yeah.
decisions that we make, it also may influence, I think, a lot of people to think differently,
Mm.
um, on the renewable side too. So
Totally.
we still have a long way to go there,
We
but
do. We do.
I say that with all this junk in my shelves. But
Hey, I hear you. I mean, it's one of those things like even just like energy around the planet. I think that's something that we're stuck in this weird thing where it's, we obviously want to make the world a better place, leave it better than we did, but it's like removing gas without replacing anything with it just leaves people with nothing, with no energy. So we're just kind of stuck in this like crazy thing. And there's a lot of material science that I think could really develop in the next 10
oh,
years.
I'm so excited about material science. We
Yeah.
actually
Okay. Let's
invested in,
talk about
okay,
it.
let's talk about it. Um, we invested in a company called Chromatic, and
Mm.
it's not about the 3D printing. It's the chemical reaction enabled by 3D printing. And
Jordan
Cora,
mentioned this. Yes.
yes, Cora, their founder, is a material scientist and chemist, and just fascinating. And it's so neat to see what she can do that's
Mm.
enabled by a 3D printer. That's just like fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think bioengineering, material science, all of those applications are going to be just popping off here, and they already
Absolutely.
are. So
They are. They absolutely are. From a bioscience additive perspective, I'll give an example of where I see like a really value add, and I'd like you to give one too.
okay.
Big picture sci-fi stuff, but if like we're able to 3D print an organ, like
Oh
a
gosh, yeah,
heart, a lung, and it
so
functions and
cool.
it's compatible, not only is it amazing and crazy, like okay, yeah, if I get old, I can replace it, but even like transplants, like let's say you have cancer or something, you have to get something removed,
Totally.
you can make the same organ and not need the rejection medicine. Like the
Hmm.
lifestyle of someone gets changed absolutely with something like
Totally.
that if we get it right. So
I
that
mean,
to me is huge.
yeah, I think bioengineering in general, it's actually more forward than a lot of people realize.
Mm.
Where we can bioengineer breast milk, and so
Wow.
many unique things that can
Meat, or
replicate
I guess
other
fake
things.
meat. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
replicate the original, and
Mm.
it's really exciting to see what's happening there. And some
Yeah.
countries are a bit ahead there, even on the like regulatory side.
Mm.
But I think that people are pretty into it here as well, which is exciting. But I mean,
Mm.
literally, it ranges from, of course, I'd say the food tech space is definitely more visible to most.
Mm.
But then, yeah, like you're saying, with and then what happens when we're engineering in space, like in Leo, if
Totally.
you're engineer, if you are trying to replicate an organ
Totally.
in in Leo, and allowed to travel anywhere, and like Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Hunger Games is a little controversial, I know, but like,
Yeah.
when the things just fall out of the sky, and it's like, dong, here it is,
Yeah.
And Leo,
Yeah.
it can get
Airdrop.
anywhere really fast. So you
Absolutely.
airdrop it,
Absolutely.
anywhere in the world.
Oh man,
It's
that
wild.
it is wild. And that's also something that's been weird. I haven't talked about it that much, but I know there's been a lot of interest, maybe at least in just articles and surface level funding, but um, in the idea that SpaceX's Starship will be able to just launch and return to deliver things around the planet, which I think
Mhm.
is it opens up a whole nother bag of regulations and what's possible and how you'd need to look at the global landscape in itself, which the infrastructure is definitely not set up for something
It's
like that.
definitely not there. But this also, like, the whole space debris thing also could be why, people are trying to get to Mars. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Mars will be really amazing, and I think we're gonna see a shot at it. I mean, it's planned right now. I think SpaceX wants to, if they meet uh, that orbital window, to actually toss
Yeah.
that thing over there. But um, NASA's also not that far behind. Finally, pulling themselves out of the last decade, which is so awesome to see.
Oh my
They've got
gosh, I'm
so many
loving it.
launch providers now, and funding starting to flow. It's good.
I
It's
mean,
good in that regard.
finally, I used to watch the movies and be like, oh my God, when people would get that excited and all huddle around the TV before
Yeah.
a launch. And I'm like, I remember
Hmm.
having an assembly at school for, um, I think it would have been one of the last time John Glenn went to space. And I remember being
Wow.
like, that is so cool. I also went to space camp because I grew up in
Awesome.
Alabama near Huntsville, the Huntsville Space and Rocket Center.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool. And so, but
Oh,
but a
okay.
lot of this I like, was exposed to through film.
Yeah.
And to see that we're kind of reliving all of this, and with
Hmm.
people talking about it and counting down until launch and going
Yeah.
outside and looking for it if you can see it, if you're near Vandenberg.
Yes.
Like here we can see some of them if it's a clear day. So
And you guys get the nice view of all that fuel ejecting.
yeah, we actually can see a
Jellyfish.
lot from over here. It's pretty cool.
That's so cool.
But I'm like, man, this is really neat because I thought that those days were potentially gone for a while. But I've
Yeah.
always been into space, into flying aircraft, like I love flying.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you
oh my
fly?
gosh, I love it. Well, I actually did not a ton of hours, but I've done some hours towards my PPL. I just don't have time
Nice.
to
I
to commit
Yep.
because I would want to do it just boom, 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 and really
Hmm.
commit to it, and muscle memory, and just have a regular cadence of flying. And I don't
Totally.
have the time to do that. But I loved it. It's so fun. It's so
It's
fun.
great.
One day, my brother's going to be able to take me up in an Osprey. I'm just putting that out there. I also would love to fly in uh onto a carrier. So if anyone listening
Yeah.
can make that happen, let's go. I'll make sure it's like quality entertainment for everyone.
If you could pick, what would you fly in on?
Well, I've always wanted to fly in an Osprey, and
Okay.
so I think I would have to, jump in with my brother and
Nice.
land in an Osprey. But also, like, gosh,
That would be great.
it, I mean, I think it'd be thrilling to fly on anything really. It just would be kind of a dream come true. But I love all
Absolutely.
types of aircraft, so I'm like,
Cool.
what about you?
Oh, I grew up next to a local airport, so
Oh, cool.
yeah, so I kind of grew up. It's funny you were saying you're near Huntsville, like that. I Have you noticed that you were influenced by that stuff by like proximity?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Also, there was not much to do. um, so yes, but
Yeah.
how cool that we got to go to space camp. Like I'm like,
True.
that's pretty awesome. I
True.
remember thinking it was really really cool.
Mm,
But yeah, I think so. I think proximity, but also like
yeah.
for fun, we like to go watch airplanes land
Oh, that's
at the
great.
airport. So
That's one of my favorite things is to walk close to it and end of my walk, sit down, watch for a while, and then head back. But yeah, no, growing up watching all those different types of like small private aircraft fly in and fly out, and it's so close that you can see the undercarriage, you can actually
oh,
like
it's so
inspect them.
great.
It's great. So,
When my brother was first learning,
mm,
so he went to the Naval Academy, and it was
mm,
right after the Naval Academy when he started, all the flying stuff. And he at one point was able to fly in, and it was over the holidays, so I was at home, and there's a Shelby County Airport. It's a really small airport just
mm,
outside of Birmingham. And as part of his, training, and he was on like a Cessna or something, um, he was flying, he like mapped it so that he could go to Shelby County Airport. And so my whole family were sitting in the back of like the bed of my oldest brother's truck, like with blankets, like, oh my God. Fun, but like little did we know he was gonna be, flying Ospreys. And
Yeah.
he actually was on HMX-1, which is a presidential squadron of Ospreys,
Oh
which I
wow.
mean, fascinating. Not that I didn't expect him to go big, because
Yeah.
that's all he knows how to do. But it was so neat. He was practicing his like touch and goes, and so he
Oh,
like came
great.
in,
Oh, that
landed, and then
seems
went right
very
back.
important.
And we were
Yeah, now
like,
that you say
"That's
that.
my brother," Shelby County. Anyone out there? Like the cows are like, "Woo." It's so fun
That's
though.
awesome.
So you did y'all do when y'all went to watch airplanes? Were you in the beds of trucks
So there's like a
or
little
no?
lawn. There's like a little lawn. So like up here, so where I grew up, it's a suburb of Boston. So
Oh, cool.
it's a
Not
small
quite.
town where everybody knows each other. So it definitely has that feel to it, the good and the bad.
Yeah,
Um, but
that's a true crime
definitely
podcast. But
felt like,
anyway,
yeah, absolutely. Felt like there was like a lot of time. It's a totally different world now, but in the early 90s, like it felt like there was just a bunch of time to kill. So a
yeah,
bunch of time in the woods and going
totally.
places. So the local airport has just a nice lawn. You could literally just lie out on like a nice
Hmm.
summer day and just sit back and watch them just come in and out. It's great.
I love that. Sometimes I go
Yeah.
out to Camarillo and do that, and I'll
Mm.
bring like a tailgating chair.
Oh, nice.
Alabama's really coming out. But I would take a lot actually during the pandemic. I did this a ton.
Mm.
I would just go out to Camarillo because I live in Agora now, but I was in Calabasas at the time,
Mm.
and so Camarillo is super close. That's where I did my hours towards my PPL. But
Cool.
I would just go take my tailgating chair and sit out there and watch, and then you can actually tune into ATC, so you can
Oh,
hear
great.
what they're saying, and it's really fun.
That's cool.
I honestly did that a ton during the pandemic. I did that, and I went to Target.
Hey,
That's how I stayed somewhat normal. Was going to Target and talk to people. I would just talk to people at
that's
Target.
good. That's good. I probably should talk to more people, but this podcast is like my outlet. So
I love it.
thank
I
you.
never. We've really gone down some rabbit holes. This is great.
It's beautiful. It's like a conversation. It's great. It's just kind of like rolls.
What does that quote say next to you?
The quote says, "Success is not measured by what we have. It's about who we are and what we give."
I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. So true.
Thank you. Little
So
reminder.
true.
Little reminder every day.
We all need that.
We do. We do. So you mentioned I want to tie it up a little bit. I wanted
Great.
to close up on Embedded Adventures, but definitely you mentioned you have experience recruiting, and I know there's a lot of people I talked to through the podcast that um, are looking to get into STEM or are have a STEM background and are maybe not in a place where they like it. They're trying to go into either space or some other field. So, like, if there's any advice you have, especially now with the climate that we have,
Hmm.
or maybe just some good old advice that works, um,
I
what
think
kind of
that
advice do you have for folks?
Well, I just think it's a good reminder. And I even have to remind myself when
Mm,
my, insecurities creep up, that nonlinear careers are becoming the norm.
mm,
The tech industry is filled with individuals who are channeling their experiences in various sectors into tech centric careers. And so
mm,
for me, it was creativity, discipline, and all of those other skills that I learned through dance that
mm,
really level up the work that I do in tech.
mm,
The VC industry for sure is still dominated by a lot of rigid rules
mm,
that do not reflect the eclectic world that we live in today. So, um, I didn't take the traditional trajectory into this career. So
yeah.
I feel like it allows me to think outside of the box. So I'd encourage others who are, might have a nonlinear path to wherever they end up to fully embrace it, to know their value, to embrace what makes them different,
Mm,
and know that it's okay to not know.
yeah.
Like I was saying, like I didn't. There were many years where I was going, I really just don't know what I'm going to end up doing. I
Mm,
certainly didn't dream of being a recruiter when I grew up, and it wasn't
yeah.
until I transitioned. But I also was dancing at the same time and enjoying, you know, my creative side, and I still do.
Yeah.
I It wasn't until I landed in venture that I went, wow, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And
Mm,
so it's okay to not know, but then especially it can be really intimidating, and especially in the seat I sit in, as one of the 4% of female fund managers. There are a lot of people who aren't used to have seeing someone like me in this position, and I take that opportunity really seriously. But I also really embrace what got me here, and it's something I'm really proud of. I've had people tell me, don't wear that, change your nails, I can't use this photo. I've had people say, can we use a photo from like 10 years ago? I'm like, it doesn't even look like me. I had black hair, and like no one's gonna know who I am. But it's people trying to get you to not be your authentic self, which I put my foot down and say, no, it's what makes me great at what I do. And it's hard to not let insecurities get the best of us sometimes. So I think that reminder that, hey, we're all doing great, first of all, but also it really embraced the nonlinear path that brought you wherever you are. And honestly, it's what makes our job exciting. It's normally the nonlinear aspects to my career that people get the most excited about when I meet them, and they want to talk about. And then and it's really interesting, and I'm like, that's funny how like some people really try to get you to diminish that, but it's actually the thing that makes you so relatable and like so interesting to people. And so I don't know, I'm glad that the world's changing and in a lot of areas, slower in others, but it's cool that nonlinear paths are becoming the norm. And we can do like you can also do so many different things at the same time, and celebrate it and talk about it and share it on your social media channels, and I don't know, it's really fun. Like even thinking about this conversation, I'm like, man, we have talked about so many different things.
So many.
And how cool is that?
It is. It'll be so many clips.
I love it. What is your advice? What would be the advice that you would give?
Thank you again for the question.
Yeah, no, I'm interested to hear.
I think I'll build on that, on what you mentioned. Like, definitely part of the reason why I'm even having this conversation with you right now is because I figured out what I was really good at and then tried to amplify that. And then along the way, I started figuring out the other things I needed to like build around that. But I had to stop I was thinking about this the other day. I had to stop thinking about what I should be doing and just started tasting things.
Yeah.
I guess is the best way I can explain it. And that's the advice I've given like a bunch of interns that I've worked with who are like moving on and trying to figure out what they were going to do. It's just like taste, especially like as soon as you get out of school, like I don't think you should be at the same job for 4 years unless you love it and you're getting experience. Like you should be getting the most you can get out of it, and as soon as you find something else that interests you, like go there,
jump in,
go do
give
that.
it a go.
Yeah.
Totally.
And if you do know what you want to do, then start doing like the daily stuff, like what you guys are doing with the Twitch stream, what I'm doing with the podcast. It's like I wanted to play a part in the aerospace industry, and now like here we are having this conversation.
Totally.
It's not what I like originally dreamed of. Like I'm not manifesting the actual thing, but the opportunities that have come up that I've been able to now talk to people like yourself, like that all happened because I just kept saying, all right, what else where does this go? What else can we find from this? So
I love it. And I have to say, podcasts, I'm an avid podcast listener.
Nice.
I'm actually one of the people that most people get very annoyed by, and I'll have I'll have a podcast on, a TV on, music playing, and I'm like in the zone, but I love listening to podcasts. I really, really enjoyed listening to your episode with Jordan. I know I mentioned it earlier, but it's just so rare to hear y'all take such a, unfiltered approach to certain topics. And it was, it just made me, first of all, so proud that those conversations were being had. And it's also in a way confronting that I don't hear some of those things that regularly. And I'm an avid podcast listener. And so it just really meant a lot to me that y'all
Sure.
were talking about some of the things that you did. So everyone listen
Mm.
back to Jordan's episode too.
Definitely, definitely.
And even just how you celebrated some of the, non-traditional components to what we do. And it just was really refreshing. I know
Yeah.
when we were having some scheduling issues, I was like, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, thank you for that
And
email.
I
I
actually have
appreciated
major
it.
stage fright. I'm not
Oh.
making this up. I actually like love talking to people,
Mm.
but live on camera, like on the spot, and you know available to as many people as is
Yeah.
available to listen. I get really really nervous, and so I have to say, after listening to your episode with Jordan, I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun.
Okay. Good. Good. I'm
I'm
glad.
gonna be nervous anyway,
Yeah.
but
Totally.
I'm really excited, and so yeah, thanks for going for it and creating this platform.
Absolutely.
And it is scary. It's scary to put yourself out here like this,
It is.
and how regularly you do it. And um, I am just like, I don't know how you do it, because even
Well,
on the Twitch
thank you.
stream, I'm like, I don't have to interview people or
Yeah.
anything, and hands are shaking while I'm doing
Oh,
the project. It's wild.
if you go back to an early YouTube episode, I nervous, like I don't can't even like hold my
I
face,
don't
and I
believe it.
still no seriously, I still get nervous, to this day. But I have like a blacksmith just hammered myself into the right crystal structure,
Yeah.
for it. So like I don't know, I've put in enough time doing it. It's definitely helps, but um, I was also a jazz musician growing up,
Oh,
so
that's so cool.
I've performed enough times, and that was kind of part of the reason why I started a podcast. Was like, I'm not playing music as much anymore, but I still want to
Mm,
perform. How do I do that? Well, let me get on the mic and talk, and then
that
when
is
I
so cool. So can you
yeah.
play for us?
Oh no, I cannot play for you right now.
Okay,
I
next
need to
time.
build my embouchure back. I'm a trumpet player.
Oh wow.
So I actually ended up injuring myself playing trumpet, like towards the end of my high school career,
Oh no.
of playing. It is, there's all tiny muscles in your
Oh, I
lips.
believe it.
Yeah. So when you play too high and too loud, sometimes you rip them. So
I
that's
don't
what
know
I
how
did.
you do it. I was on dance team in high school, and we performed with our band, which honestly we had so much fun. We actually performed in the Rose Bowl parade. We all
Oh,
came out to
that is
California.
sick.
It was a huge deal for us.
That's
Um,
huge.
but I mean, trust me,
Yeah.
I was always in awe
Mm.
at anyone playing an instrument. I was like, man, I could barely march to the beat. I was like, ding, ding, ding. But that's awesome. So do you still do jazz? Are you going to get back into it? Are
I
you
definitely want to get back into it. A lot of the music that's on this podcast is stuff that I've digitally created, either by myself or with my
cool?
friends. So we are always like, COVID obviously threw everything off, but whenever we get together, we'll like pull stuff out and play. So it's more
That's
about
so cool.
getting the discipline together to like, and it'll have to come from me, where it's like, okay, if we want to make music for this, like I've got to be the band leader. I've got to make sure we organize it. So I'm just not there yet.
That's
So,
so cool. I
but
love
it
that.
is coming. It is coming.
Jazz music is great, and there used to be um so many cool places, especially in LA, that would have
Mm.
live music every
Oh,
night. And I'll never forget when I used to love going to this actually, I don't even know what it was called. It was just a like a hole in the wall
oh, that's even better.
um place in Hollywood, near, not far from like Hollywood and Vine, Hollywood and Gower,
Mm.
like in the heart of Hollywood. And they closed it down to open the Dream Hotel, and I
Mm.
was devastated because
Damn.
it was a place where when you just wanted great live music, you didn't want to have to worry about lines or anything like that, and it just was a great chill moment. You would go
Mm.
there, and seeing some of those a just be taken over by hotels or whatever.
Yep.
But then with the pandemic, I'm like, man, I miss live music
Yeah, me too.
so much.
Me too. Yeah.
So but I listen to my my dance music all the time.
You have to. I mean, yeah, I listen to so many different genres of music. It's crazy.
I love
Um,
it. Well, we'll
yeah.
once you are ready to play again, let me know.
Okay.
I
Cool.
want to hear it. That's so awesome.
Absolutely.
If we ever need
Absolutely.
music for anything, I'm gonna hit you
Okay.
up.
Hit me up. Hit me up. That would be great.
I'll do
That
it.
would be awesome.
I
uh,
love it.
Jenna, thank you so much for being on the podcast this week. you said you had stage fright, but you were a complete joy to go back and forth with.
Well,
So
thank
thank
you.
you.
You made it easy.
I
Thank you so much
appreciate
for
it.
having me. And I got to listen to
Absolutely.
Jordan's
True.
prep. I was like, oh, okay, okay,
Yep.
I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
But also I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be fun.
It
I
was
don't
good.
need
We
to be that
started
nervous.
off strong and we just kept going. It was good.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
was good.
That's right. I
Um,
love it.
any last thoughts that you have for the folks?
Oh gosh, too many. Again, we're here at the end, and people are probably sick of hearing me talk. My
No, no.
nickname is Mouth of the South, so. But if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I love getting LinkedIn connection requests. So find me on LinkedIn, and I will write back to you. So just add in the note that you listen to this. If you have any questions for me or literally anything, I'm kind of an open book, and I think it's important, especially with what we do and with venture being so, in ways, one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah.
I'm excited to share with people how we do what we do, so that if there is someone who is interested in this career or is launching their own fund, I want to be available to them. I want to
Yeah.
share whatever I've learned, even though I know there's still a ton more to learn. But Jordan and I, even in a short period of time, have learned so much, and so much that's not available
Yeah.
to people, and that we've really had to pry out of
Yeah.
people. And so I would love to be, a resource for anyone who is wanting to start their own fund or has questions there, or if you just want to connect in general.
Yeah. Thank you for both you and Jordan doing that. I think there's not a lot of barely anyone that I know that's doing that with what you guys are doing. So, making yourself available is really cool. So,
Well, it's important,
yeah, it is.
and it's
It
like,
is.
how can you know that you're evaluating the best opportunities out there if you don't put yourself out there and know more people?
Right.
Like, I always feel so behind. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I hate even the term networking, but it's like, it's
Yeah.
how like, if it's our job to know everything that's out there, we have to know
True.
people all over the world who are engineering things. And so
Yeah.
I really love when it's outside. Like, I definitely love looking outside of our ecosystem.
Mm.
Like, we already, cold outreach has kind of brought me to where I am. That's actually how I met Jordan.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I think it's really important that the warm intro only culture of it all bites the dust, and
Mm.
we, expand our networks, get to know anyone and everyone who's working on cool things and should have the
Yeah.
opportunity to get funding. So,
Absolutely. Well,
yeah,
you heard it here, folks. Jenna Bryant, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
this was
Um,
so fun. Thank you so much. And send me the details of your t-shirt.
yes, absolutely. I'll send you Juleah Kaliski's designs. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna be looking her up after this. Thank you so
Perfect.
much. This was awesome.
Thank you. This was awesome. Everybody, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your week. Spread love and spread science. Live long and prosper. Have a great rest of your week.
I love it. Bye.